Hey, and good Friday morning, everybody. Meteorologist Greg Majeski back with you here on the Weather Nerds YouTube channel with the weather report here on your November the 14th, 2025. Your no-nonsense weather guy here to give it to you straight without all that social media hype. And again, we got a lot to talk about here. We're going to talk about very stormy conditions out in the West Coast, and as anticipated, some moderate flooding risks in Southern California. Then we're going to turn our attention to next week. Could be interesting. You know, we talk about November sometimes being referred to as that secondary severe weather season, and looking likely we may see some severe weather next week, as well as a threat of tornadoes. I'm going to show you why there in just a second, what day we're looking at. And we're also going to talk about a look ahead toward Thanksgiving week, okay? Been a lot of talk about the polar vortex and big outbreaks and stuff like that. See some really crazy things out on social media. If it says GFS on it, just ignore it, please, because that model, I just don't trust it. It is too rambunctious. It fluctuates too much. Just don't care for it. Hey, if you're new here to the channel and you like to support our efforts to providing you guys accurate, no-nonsense weather information here, again, please consider subscribing to the channel. It'll be an honor and privilege to be one of your weather sources. And it doesn't cost you anything. We do this Monday through Friday, and we do occasional lives as well. Again, we can't compete against the big boys. They just kind of take all the oxygen out of the room, but we do what we can here. So again, if you'd like to do that, please come on board with us. All right, let's go talk about our weather here for yesterday. I'm still fighting the throat thing, by the way, so please bear with me here. I don't know why I'm still fighting this, but it's still there. So anyway, our high and low yesterday across the country, as I get out of studio mode here, there we go. We were looking at 14 up at Mount Washington yesterday. And once again, it is the Rio Grande Village again at 95. So those are extremes. See how quiet it is here across a big portion of the country. Looking pretty quiet here, but boy, are they active out here on the West Coast. Got a lot of energy here coming around out there. I probably need to go ahead and put a West Coast satellite image here to make this a little bit better. We'll put that in my to-do notes here for tomorrow. And let's go look at the surface map out there. As we're looking, again, pretty quiet here across most of the nation. We're still looking at this very active storm flow here across Southern California. We're getting a lot of heavy rains down this way. Some mountain snows out here as well. But really for 2/3 of the country, it's pretty quiet here as we get ready to go into the weekend. Now, current watches and warnings because of all that rain. We do have a lot of flood watches out there across California. Obviously, the Sierra Nevada looking at some pretty heavy snows, as well as some, obviously, with some winter storm warnings there in the pink and some winter weather advisories. Got some red flag advisories out here in the plains. A little fog there across portions of Oklahoma. A little wind up here, but that's about it. I mean, all the action's out on the West Coast for right now. So speaking of that, let's go take a look at that radar out there as we're looking at down towards Southern California, as we're looking at Thousand Oaks and Glendale and Los Angeles. This whole area here is just going to be inundated. Obviously, you see, like, what happened to the radar image? Well, it's because there's mountains on the other side, so I can't quite shoot the beam over the mountains. But you get the gist here. We got a lot of pretty good, steady, heavy rains, a lot of moisture coming into this area, and flooding is going to be a bit of a problem out there. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into that. Nothing to show you out in the tropics for obvious reasons. Things are quiet out there. So let's go ahead and talk about the excessive rain threat here for today. Before we go and jump into thunderstorms, we'll do this first, as it's going to be quite impressive. So as anticipated, we said this yesterday. I said it wouldn't shock me if they bumped this up to moderate, and they did. And we're getting this for today. Again, we're talking Southern California here. A lot of Los Angeles metro into this with some heavy rains. Again, you got a lot of concrete, a lot of urban areas out there, so flooding can become a bit of a problem, especially in an area that's basically a desert for all intents and purposes, okay? So a lot of heavy rains here and through the interior sections as well. This is your day one for today. This will continue into tomorrow, even a bigger area here, dealing with slight to moderate risk of seeing some flooding problems here across Southern California. So again, all of the metro area of Los Angeles seeing that moderate risk. Yellow here into the Death Valley Park and heading over toward Las Vegas even and getting into Arizona. So a much larger area here dealing with the excessive rainfall. And then day 3, it starts to back off, and then we're just kind of dealing mostly here in the West Coast. So that is our area of concern, is the flooding threat across Southern Cal going here for the next 3 days. All right, let's go take a look at the thunderstorm threat here. Obviously, here's your day 1 here. Southern California, obviously, where the storms are out there. Day 2, we got that little pocket we were discussing yesterday here across portions of Pennsylvania. Pittsburgh's into this, going in for your Saturday, Morgantown. Maybe some gusty winds with that setup there. And then our day 3 going in for that. Now, as far as beyond that, next week's going to need to be watched. You're going to watch closely going into early next week, and then especially going toward Thursday, as I'm really concerned. I'm growing a little concerned about this part of the country right down here going into next week. So I'm going to show you that here as we go through the model data here in just a second. So let's go through the weekend first, and let's talk about that. So let's look at the NAM model here, the latest 6Z. Obviously, West Coast is where all the action is out there, considering that continued plume of moisture just continuing to wrap in here across Southern Cal. So it's going to be a real mess out there. We do have a storm system coming in Saturday and Sunday across the Northeast as well. So we got two systems to watch. One there across Southern California, moving up there. We got a little storm up there in Washington State. And then we got the next drop down one coming in here going into Saturday. So here, calling Saturday, again, Saturday afternoon, kind of crossing the Great Lakes and coming into the Northeast, going into Saturday night and into Sunday. That'll drop some snows up that way. So those are our two systems here, tracking here going into the weekend. Now, as far as the rainfall total is concerned, we got a little bit of rain out here across the Northeast, some heavy rains across portions of obviously West Virginia. But the big story, obviously, is what's going on here. This is only a 60-hour loop, so this kind of takes you right till Sunday at 1 o'clock. And you're looking at 6 inches plus, 5 inches plus, at 7 inches plus. So again, some pretty heavy rains here across Southern California. Flooding is going to be a problem. This is all the metro area of Los Angeles. You see that kind of a concentrated rain. And then this up here will be heavy mountain snows up here in the Sierra Nevada here with some of the rainfall equivalents of 5 inches plus. So you know what the snow total is going to be on that. And then we got a little rain here across the areas of Washington State as well. Some pretty heavy rains as well. So those are our hot rain spots. Look how much of the country here going into the weekend. Really not bad. Now, that's going to change, folks, especially there in the middle of the country. When I show you the European, you're going to go, wow, look at all that. We got some big changes coming there in the middle of the country going into next week as some of that energy out west works its way off to the east. So, again, as far as the temperature is concerned, the story of above normal temperatures, especially in the eastern two-thirds of the United States, that's going to be continuing to be the thing here going into next week. So, again, kind of stopping this at the 4 o'clock level. Look at these temperatures here. Once again, broken record, 70 degree temperatures in Nebraska, into South Dakota in the middle of November. This is really unusual. 60s here in Iowa. We got 80s here across Texas. So just some cold air across the Northeast. That's about it for today. We're going to get some cold air out in the west, but it's going to take a little while. And then going in for tomorrow morning, you can see this warm up here in the middle of the country here. Out to have a front come right through there. So you can kind of see the warm up here in the 60s for morning lows in Iowa. Hard to believe that they had a foot of snow near Chicago. They're going to be a morning low around 60 on Saturday. Got some freezing temperatures up across the Northeast. Obviously, we got that another reinforcing shot of cold air coming up there. And that's not looking bad for your Saturday. Saturday afternoon, let's look at the Saturday afternoon temperatures here. Get you ready for the weekend here. Again, look how much of the country here is mild. Very mild. We've got some cool air up here across the northern plains, the Northeast, but a lot of the country here looking pretty warm as we go into your weekend. All right. Let's talk about the weather pattern here. All right. Now, been a lot of traffic talk out there. GFS, American GFS, I do not trust that model. It is highly, degenerates too much, okay, for my taste. What I'm seeing here on the European model is this ridging in the southeast. It kind of favors the La Nina pattern we're in, the negative PDA out in the Pacific. It favors a West Coast solution. I kind of go with what the European is showing here. So where it's going to stay colder out in the west, wet out there, and milder here in the east. So going into Thanksgiving week, we'll have to watch and see how it looks like right now. That's going to be pretty mild. Backing this up, getting ahead of myself a little bit here. What I'm mainly concerned about next week is this piece of energy here. All right, this energy here coming out of the southwest, and as this thing spins on out, it takes in what we call a bit of a negative tilt here. All right, when it tilts backward like that, we see that the lines here tilting backward like that, that adds a little additional wind shear in the atmosphere. All right, so to kind of give you a different perspective on that, I'll show you this here. Again, the same thing. You're showing that jet energy going like this, tilting back. This is going into your Thursday afternoon next week. So we're talking about the 20th. So the 20th and into the 21st are my target days for a real significant, by fall standards, potential for severe weather. Now, it's still 6 days out, so obviously anything could change a little bit. But right now, I'm putting up a yellow flag on that, okay? Yellow star cluster, it's up right now. We just need to watch that very closely, as that's going to be a bit of a problem there. So you can kind of see that kind of tilting on off. So going into Thursday, and then it lifts on out and moves on to the east. So that is my concern. You see it kind of coming out of the southwest, and this kind of goes into your Thursday. Thursday's going to be a concern, and that does include Arkansas, by the way. I know, Mick, you're watching. So again, just watch out for that, okay? Just pay attention. I'm not saying it's a done deal, but wait till we get a little bit closer. But that's something we definitely need to watch for next week, all right? All right, so let's talk about our simulated radar here for the week here. Let me turn this back on since it reset. I hate when it does that. Ugh, drives me crazy. So this is what we're talking about here for next week. So let's talk about first this week. Let's look again. We talk about what's going on this weekend. We got this storm system coming in here. This rivals a lot of heavy rains out the west coast. This thing finally moves inland. We got another one behind it, and it's that one coming in here. So there it is right there. I'm zooming a little bit closer. This is on Wednesday evening. You're seeing the storms here on Wednesday evening. And then going into Thursday. That right there, yeah, that's pretty impressive, okay? Thursday afternoon, looking at a pretty good line from Oklahoma down through Texas, coming into Arkansas, going into next week. So this will need to be watched because of what the dynamics are showing, the wind shear that's there. I think there will be a tornado risk with this as well. Okay, I think it'll be definitely above a 2% for sure. I think 5%, maybe going up to an enhanced severe weather potential. I think it's there based off the guidance for today. All right, so this thing moves off to the east. Pretty good squall line, but it does weaken as it goes across the southeast. So I'm not anticipating this to be severe like Friday across the southeast. Okay, maybe a marginal, maybe, but not really that concerned. It's Thursday is the target day for next week. All right. So we'll watch that closely for the week ahead. All right, so after this goes on by, we're looking okay here for the week. So again, we kind of keep the 7 days here on that European model. All right, so Thursday, that's our day to watch. All right, let's talk about our precipitation here for the week, the next 10 days. Again, you kind of get an idea here. The middle of the country with that storm system coming out, we get some pretty good rains here. You saw through the weekend, we got practically nothing, but Southern California, a lot of heavy rains out here, 10 inches plus showing up here on the European model, 8 inches there. We got some heavy rains here in the middle of the country, including coming into Arkansas, Missouri, Iowa, and up toward Wisconsin. A lot of this coming with that storm system on Wednesday and Thursday of next week, and fairly dry across the southeast. Again, this is your 10-day total here. Let me turn my thing back on here. Taking you out to the 23rd, so 10 days out, all right? Let's talk about snow. Let's talk about this as well. And we're still showing that heavy snow out there in the Sierra Nevada. We're still talking 32 inches of snow out here. This is your 10-day total. So we're looking at some very heavy snows, feet of snow. We talked about that yesterday. That's still there. Still looking at some intermountain snows, and we're still looking at some snows here across New England, but really not that bad overall. This is, again, for the next 10 days. And then beyond that, if it gets colder out in the west, as I think being advertised on the long-range model here, we will see that change. Now, as far as up here toward Canada, one thing I did notice up here was, boy, they got a really good, healthy dumping of snow up here. Really good. Again, we pay attention to the snows up there in Canada because that allows that cold air to kind of build up if we get a good snowpack on the ground. So what I'm seeing is an early jump on a decent snowpack across the north, and that'll be a factor a little bit later in the season. Now, what we're seeing right now with the overall pattern is one where we're basically still seeing the influences of La Nina. Now, we did put out yesterday, I guess I should have included this in this update, that the La Nina is forecast to go back to a neutral phase by January. That's a significant big deal because that means the influence as far as mild weather in the south, that'll change a little bit. But this still looks like to me a very typical La Nina setup here across the southern tier of the United States and a negative PDA. Where we're going to be dealing with the active weather on the West Coast. That still looks pretty active to me. So speaking of that, let's go ahead. I want to talk about this. I want to talk about the snapshot here for Thanksgiving Day. All right. So this is Thanksgiving on the American GFS. What it's showing here is what you've seen a lot of social media talking about, the polar vortex disturbance, stratospheric warming. It's been getting a lot of play across the area. It's showing some pretty cold air out here in the west, with a pretty sharp front in here, all right? That's what the American GFS is showing. The European, not so much, okay? It's not showing anywhere the intrusion in here. Pretty mild here across the south. You got some cold air up across the high Rockies, but that's about it. So we got a disagreement between the two models here. Again, just to show the difference. There you see it much milder here across the eastern 2/3, a little chilly in the northeast. And then you're looking at the European, and it looks pretty, not really seeing any, it looks, doesn't look overly cold, except for maybe up there in the high Rockies. So that's what we're looking ahead for Thanksgiving. We'll track that day by day as we get closer. Again, looking for that model continuity. Right now, I kind of believe more what the European is selling than what the GFS is showing at this point. But it could change. We'll watch closely on that. Now, as far as your temperatures are going for next week here, let's go ahead and talk about that. Let me pull back out of here as we're going to be looking ahead for this upcoming weekend. So let's go look at your going to your Sunday here. Not quite as bad on Sunday. Looks like we backed the temperatures off here a little bit. Let me go back here. Here we go. We backed the temperatures off here just a little bit here. A little bit cooler across the Great Lakes to the northeast going into Sunday. The south, it's going to continue to stay pretty mild, okay? That's going to continue, and that's going to be a factor. All right, so I'm going to take you a look at the temperatures here. This is your Monday temperatures here. We got temperatures in the 80s down here. Again, we got to watch this closely because this time of year when it comes to severe weather, you got to have all the ingredients, not just the upper level dynamics. You got to have some sort of instability there to kind of help just a little bit. It's a little bit harder to get in the fall, but I think we're going to see it this week. So again, here's your Tuesday temperature. We got temperatures in the 80s there across East Texas. That's a big deal. Going into Wednesday, again, still looking at 80s. Here's some 90s down here. Pretty mild. We're in the 70s in Arkansas here on Wednesday. And then Thursday, the day we're expecting that active severe weather to kind of kick in here, we got temperatures here in the 70s. All right, so that to me, it's marginal, but I think with the dynamics we're going to have in place, we're going to be seeing some pretty good stuff. So as we get closer to this, we'll look at the different severe weather parameters, the CAPE, which is your energy. We'll look at the helicity and wind speed. We'll focus in on that as we get a little bit closer. But again, Thursday looks like that'll be the day to watch. The timing could change, but we'll see what happens. All right, now let's go. We'll wipe things up here. Look at your climate outlook here. As you would expect, what we've been seeing here on the models and everything else, it is going to be plenty warm with the temperatures. The south, there across the south, be running some 10, maybe 15 degrees above normal for this time of year, going from the 19th to the 23rd. And then it's colder out in the west for obvious reasons. You see that. And then that pretty much holds right into Thanksgiving Day. Warm in the east, colder in the west as we go in from the 21st to the 27th. Now, where I disagree a little bit with this outlook here from the 6 to 10 is, like, for example, here across Georgia, we're only expecting like one rain event in the next 10 days. That, to me, does not constitute above normal chance for precipitation. Now, this here, we saw this. You saw how that was lining up. Yeah, that was looking pretty wet there in the middle of the country, but southeast, not really that much. Really kind of looking at a little drier weather there. 8 through 14, going from the 21st to 27th, showing a lot of the country with above normal chance of precipitation expected there going later in the month, which would be a great thing to see. We'll see if that happens. Obviously, we got a lot of drought conditions across the south. We got to beat back a little bit. All right, so there we go. So there we got for weekend. Folks out in Southern California, got to watch out for that flooding risk out there. The urban areas that tend to get flooded need to be careful out there. Some pretty good snows out there in the Sierra Nevada. And then we really got to turn our attention to that potential severe weather risk. Right now, I'm just kind of saying yellow alert, stay prepared. Look on that. Don't go into panic mode just yet, but just something to be aware of as we go toward next week. And I think by Monday when we do our update, we definitely will have a much better idea of what we can expect here across the later across the south here as we get ready for secondary severe weather season. That's November and December. We watch it every year. Anyway, who we got out there this morning? We got Florence. We got Edith. Good to see you guys out there this morning. Appreciate you guys checking in. And we'll show you guys next week on Monday. We'll get you ready for next week. And we'll see how things play out. All right. You guys take it easy. Be good. Stay safe. And we'll see you next week. You guys have a great and safe weekend. We'll talk to you later.